The grandfather clock in Judge Marcus Hamilton's chambers chimed 7 times, its deep resonance filling the wood-paneled room with familiar comfort. Early morning light filtered through the vintage lace curtains, casting delicate shadows across his pristine black robe. He adjusted his signature bow tie, midnight blue with tiny silver scales of justice, while studying his reflection in the antique mirror inherited from his father, also a judge. "Another day of serving justice," he murmured, practicing his stern expression. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly as he perfected the look that had earned him respect throughout the Franklin County Courthouse. His steel-gray hair, meticulously combed, complemented the dignified appearance he'd cultivated over 15 years on the bench. The aroma of freshly baked snickerdoodles wafted through his chambers. Every Monday morning for the past decade, Judge Hamilton arrived at 5:30 a.m. to use the small convection oven he'd installed behind his law books. The weekly ritual had become legendary among courthouse staff, earning him the affectionate nickname, the Baking Judge in local legal circles. Today's batch was special. He'd added a hint of cardamom, a subtle change that few would notice but those who mattered would recognize. The cookies weren't just treats, they were his calling cards, his way of keeping track of alliances. Vanilla for the regular staff, cinnamon for his closer confidants, and cardamom for those who kept his more delicate secrets. As he arranged the cookies on his grandmother's silver platter, his secretary Marion knocked softly. "Good morning, Your Honor. The Thompson real estate hearing has been moved to Friday afternoon as requested." She paused, inhaling deeply. "Those smell wonderful." Hamilton smiled, offering her a vanilla cookie. "Thank you, Marion. Always reliable." He watched carefully as she bit into it, noting her position as a trusted but not inner-circle employee. After 15 years of managing his staff through baked goods, he'd perfected the art of sweet manipulation. The courthouse began stirring to life around him. Through his window, he observed the morning parade of lawyers, clerks, and early defendants filing through security. His chambers, positioned perfectly at the corner of the 3rd floor, gave him a strategic view of both the main entrance and the private parking area where judges and senior staff parked. He checked his watch, a vintage Rolex passed down through 3 generations of Hamilton judges. 7:45. Right on schedule, a sleek black Tesla pulled into spot 13, reserved for visiting judges but rarely used. Right on time, just like every Monday for the past 3 months. Hamilton straightened a stack of case files, each color-coded with subtle dots at the corners that meant nothing to anyone else, but told him everything he needed to know about their handling. Red for routine, blue for special interest, and green. Green for the cases that would secure his comfortable retirement. The final morning ritual awaited. He opened his desk drawer, removing a small leather-bound notebook. Inside, perfectly aligned columns tracked his special arrangements, disguised as cookie recipes to any casual observer. "Time to update the cookbook," he whispered, adding a new entry under snickerdoodle variations. A firm knock interrupted his writing. "Come in," he called, quickly returning the notebook to its hiding place. Court Clerk Jessica Chen entered, arms full of morning dockets. "Good morning, Your Honor. Fresh cookies?" Her eyes lit up at the silver platter. Hamilton selected a cinnamon cookie. She'd earned that level of trust. Indeed, nothing starts the day better than something sweet. He smiled warmly, already mentally noting which cases she would process today. "Let's bring order to the court, shall we?" Little did the young clerk know that each bite of his carefully crafted treats came with invisible strings, weaving a web of loyalty that would soon begin to unravel in ways none of them could predict. Court reporter Amy Chen's fingers hovered over her stenotype machine as she reviewed the day's peculiar schedule. After 7 years of recording proceedings in courtroom 306, she developed an almost supernatural sense for irregularities, and today's docket made her internal alarm bells chime louder than Judge Hamilton's grandfather clock. "Third Friday in a row," she muttered, noting the familiar pattern. The morning schedule flowed normally. Traffic violations, minor disputes, the usual parade of human drama. But every Friday afternoon lately had transformed into what she privately called the real estate show, featuring an oddly specific cast of characters all connected to downtown development projects. The clock struck 12:42 p.m. Amy pretended to organize her transcripts while watching Judge Hamilton's chamber's door from the corner of her eye. Right on cue, at exactly 12:43 p.m., he emerged, his black robe swishing importantly as he strode toward the service elevator, the one technically reserved for maintenance staff. "Taking my constitutional," he announced cheerfully to no one in particular, using his usual lunch break excuse. Amy noticed he'd left his favorite gavel on the bench, something she'd never seen him do before. In 15 years, that gavel had been as inseparable from him as his bow tie collection. Through the tall courtroom windows, she spotted the familiar green food truck idling in the judge's parking area. The vehicle's logo, Healthy Habits, seemed to shimmer oddly in the afternoon sun, its letters appearing to rearrange themselves if you stared too long. No customers ever approached it, yet it appeared religiously every Friday. Amy opened her laptop, pulling up the afternoon's cases: property disputes, zoning violations, construction permits, all involving different companies on paper, but something tugged at her memory. She began cross-referencing company names with her previous transcripts, creating a spreadsheet that would have impressed any detective. Looking for patterns in the chaos, the voice made her jump. Tom Rodriguez, the law student who worked the coffee cart, stood nearby with a knowing smile. He placed a steaming cup of her usual vanilla latte on her desk. "Just organizing files," she replied carefully, angling her screen away. But Tom's eyes had already caught the spreadsheet. "Interesting. Did you know that food trucks registered to Summit Development Group, the same company trying to rebuild half of downtown?" He leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper. "And guess who handles most of their permit applications?" Before Amy could respond, the service elevator hummed. Judge Hamilton returned, precisely on schedule, clutching his signature bright green smoothie. Today, however, something was different. The manila envelope tucked under his arm had a corner torn, revealing what looked like architectural drawings. As he passed her desk, Amy noticed a business card had slipped from the envelope. With practiced casualness, she let her pen roll off her desk, retrieving both items in one smooth motion. The card bore a single line: Friday, 12:43, Lot B. The afternoon session began. Amy's fingers danced across her stenotype, recording testimony about property lines and zoning regulations. But her mind raced, connecting invisible dots. Why did the judge need a special smoothie delivery when the courthouse cafeteria made perfectly good drinks? Why did he always return with identical manila envelopes? And why did every Friday afternoon case end with the same result? Decisions favoring new development projects. As she typed, Annie didn't notice Judge Hamilton watching her with growing concern. She'd been his court reporter for 7 years after all, perhaps too long. His hand strayed to his cookie jar, considering which recipe might ensure her continued loyalty. But some puzzles, once noticed, refused to be forgotten. Even when wrapped in the sweetest of disguises, Tom Rodriguez balanced his ancient laptop precariously on the coffee cart's narrow counter, squinting at his blog's analytics. His little pet project, Courthouse Confessions, a barista's view of justice, had jumped from its usual dozen daily viewers to over 3,000 overnight. The post about Judge Hamilton's mysterious green smoothie had somehow struck a nerve. "Your usual double espresso, Judge," Tom called out, already reaching for the special Brazilian beans he reserved for his most interesting customers. Judge Hamilton paused at the cart, today's bow tie featuring tiny coffee cups against a burgundy background. "Not today, Tom." Trying to cut back, the judge's eyes flickered to Tom's laptop screen before quickly looking away. "Interesting hobby you have there." Tom's fingers tensed on the espresso machine. He hadn't mentioned his blog to anyone in the courthouse, yet something in the judge's tone suggested intimate familiarity. "Just writing about coffee and courthouse life, Your Honor. Nothing earth-shattering." As the judge walked away, Tom noticed something odd. The usual green smoothie was missing. In fact, the mysterious food truck hadn't appeared in its usual spot. Pulling out his phone, Tom scrolled through his photo archive. He'd been documenting the truck's appearances for weeks, building what he called his smoothie surveillance file. A message popped up on his screen from @legalegal_Amy. Check the business registry. Look for Healthy Habits LLC. Tom recognized the handle. Amy Chen, the court reporter who'd been asking subtle questions about his blog. The morning rush slowed to a trickle, giving Tom time to dig deeper. Healthy Habits LLC traced back to a maze of shell companies, but one name kept appearing in the paperwork: Summit Development Group. The same company featured prominently in Judge Hamilton's Friday afternoon sessions. Finding anything interesting? Tom nearly knocked over his tip jar. Amy Chen stood before him, stenotype notebook tucked under her arm. The truck's registered to 17 different companies, Tom whispered, turning his screen toward her. But here's the weird part. Every single one was incorporated on a Friday at 12:43 p.m. Amy's eyes widened. She pulled out her own notebook, flipping to a carefully coded page. That's exactly when I make my smoothie run, a smooth voice interrupted. Both Tom and Amy froze as Marcus Shaw, CEO of Summit Development, approached the coffee cart. His tailored suit probably cost more than Tom's entire college tuition. One green smoothie, extra kale, Shaw continued, placing a $20 bill on the counter. That's what you've been so curious about, isn't it? Judge Hamilton simply shares my appreciation for healthy living. Tom tried to keep his voice steady. We don't actually make smoothies, sir, just coffee. Shaw's smile never reached his eyes. No, you don't. But you do make excellent blog posts. Though perhaps you should stick to reviewing coffee rather than investigating local business practices. After Shaw left, Tom and Amy exchanged glances. Did he just threaten you? Yeah. Amy pulled out her phone, showing Tom a series of photos, but he didn't know about these. The images showed the food truck making stops at various locations around the city. Each stop corresponded with a major development project, and at each one, manila envelopes changed hands. Tom's blog had started as a fun way to document courthouse life. Now it felt like he'd stumbled onto something much bigger. He opened a new draft, fingers hovering over the keyboard. What are you going to write? Amy asked. Tom smiled grimly. The truth. But first, I need to back up everything I have. Something tells me this story is about to get more interesting than any smoothie recipe. Little did they know, Judge Hamilton was already planning a special batch of cookies for his most persistent amateur investigators. Tom's blog post, The Mystery of the Green Smoothie Judge, went viral faster than a cat video on a slow news day. As he refreshed his site stats for the 100th time that morning, local news notifications kept popping up on his phone. #FinTheJudgeSmoothie was trending across Columbus, spawning hundreds of amateur sleuths armed with smartphones and an insatiable curiosity. You've started quite the storm, Amy murmured, pausing at his coffee cart. The courthouse lobby buzzed with unusual energy as people clustered around their phones, sharing theories and photos. Look at this. She showed him a TikTok video of someone tracking the mysterious food truck across downtown, overlaid with dramatic investigation music. The video ended with the truck disappearing into an underground parking garage beneath Summit Development's headquarters. 50,000 views in 2 hours, Tom said, his voice mixing anxiety with amazement. I never meant for it to. Order in the lobby. Head of Security Mike Peterson's voice boomed across the marble floor. This is a courthouse, not a social media convention. But even Peterson couldn't stem the tide of interest. Local food bloggers had begun a citywide hunt for the source of the famous green smoothie. Every juice bar and health food store in Columbus found itself besieged by customers demanding the judge's special. Some enterprising establishments even created their own versions, promoting them with hastily made, as seen in court, signs. Tom's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Nice blog. Meet at the garden center. Bring proof. Attached was a photo of a building permit signed by Judge Hamilton, dated last Friday at exactly 12:43 p.m. "I can't tell if that's a lead or a trap," Amy said, reading over his shoulder. She'd barely finished speaking when both their phones chimed with an alert from the courthouse notification system. ATTNTY-on. All electronic devices must be surrendered upon entry. New security measures effective immediately. Judge M. Hamilton. Through the lobby's glass doors, they watched as the regular Friday food truck pulled into its usual spot. But something was different. Instead of its normal Healthy Habits logo, the side now bore the official Summit Development emblem. "They're not even trying to hide it anymore," Tom muttered, snapping one last photo before the new phone ban took effect. A commotion near the entrance drew their attention. Marcus Shaw strode in, flanked by two men carrying boxes of green smoothies, a gift for the courthouse staff. He announced loudly, "Since there's been so much interest in our humble health initiative." Judge Hamilton emerged from his chambers, bow tie slightly askew, a first in Tom's memory. "Mr. Shaw, what is the meaning of this display?" "Just embracing transparency, Your Honor." Shaw's smile remained perfect as he handed the judge a smoothie. "After all, there's nothing to hide about a simple beverage preference, is there?" The judge's hand trembled slightly as he accepted the drink. Tom noticed Amy quietly activating her stenotype machine's backup recorder, a habit that would prove invaluable later. Although, Shaw continued, his voice carrying across the now silent lobby, "I do worry about young bloggers spreading misinformation about respected judicial figures. Perhaps some sort of correction is in order." Tom felt his phone buzz one final time before the security team began collecting devices. Another message from the unknown number. "Check the smoothie ingredients. Some things aren't meant to be green." As Tom watched Judge Hamilton stare at his distinctive drink, he realized the story had grown beyond a simple blog post about courthouse curiosities. Whatever was in those smoothies, it wasn't just kale and good intentions. And somewhere in the building, a batch of cookies cooled in their special tin, waiting to restore order to a situation rapidly spinning out of control. Sarah Martinez stared at her computer screen, the glow of multiple monitors casting a blue haze in the dimly lit clerk's office. After hours, with most staff gone home, the courthouse had a different personality, one that seemed perfect for uncovering secrets buried in the new digital filing system. "Got you," she whispered, watching as another file loaded with the telltale $sign before its TIFF extension. She'd been tracking these anomalies for weeks, marking each one on a virtual calendar. Every Friday afternoon, like clockwork, files related to Summit development appeared with this distinctive marker. Her phone buzzed. A message from Tom. "Check your email. Found something about the smoothie truck." Sarah opened her inbox to find a series of photographs showing the truck making deliveries, but not to restaurants or offices. Instead, each stop corresponded with a property recently approved for rezoning in Judge Hamilton's court. She quickly cross-referenced the delivery times with her calendar of marked files. 12:43 p.m., she murmured. Every single time. The office door creaked open, making her jump. Amy Chen slipped in, carrying her stenotype machine. "The backup recorder caught something interesting today," she said, connecting the device to Sarah's computer. "Listen to this." The recording played back the morning's confrontation in the lobby, but it was what happened after, when everyone thought the recording had stopped, that made Sarah's eyes widen. Judge Hamilton and Marcus Shaw, speaking in whispers. "The blog is becoming a problem." "Everything's a problem if you look at it wrong, Marcus. Fix it, or the next delivery won't be smoothies." Sarah pulled up another window, this one showing the court's financial records. "Look at this pattern," she said, pointing to a series of transactions. Every Friday after the smoothie delivery, a new charitable donation appears in the court's foundation account. Always from different donors, always ending in 43 cents. Amy leaned closer. "Can you trace where the money goes?" Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard. Windows of data cascaded across her screens like a digital waterfall. The foundation distributes the funds to various community projects. But here's the interesting part. Every project is located on property that Summit Development recently acquired. Money laundering through smoothies and charitable giving, Amy mused. Creative. A soft thud from the hallway made them both freeze. Sarah quickly minimized her windows, but not before saving everything to a secure drive. The door opened to reveal Tom, looking unusually serious. The ingredients list, he said, holding up a crumpled receipt he'd retrieved from the food truck's trash. It's not just fruit and vegetables. There's a code embedded in the order numbers. Each ingredient corresponds to a property lot in the development plan. Sarah pulled up the zoning maps, overlaying them with her calendar of marked files. The pattern emerged like a digital constellation. Every property approved by Judge Hamilton matched a delivery location, a foundation donation, and a coded smoothie order. But why the dollar signs in the file names? Amy wondered. Sarah opened one of the marked PDFs. Because they're not just documents, she explained, showing how each file contained hidden data embedded in the electronic signature. They're receipts. Every approval has a price, paid in charitable donations and healthy drinks. The office grew quiet as the implications sank in. They had the evidence, the digital trail, the recorded conversations, the coded deliveries. But evidence wasn't the same as safety. We need to be careful how we handle this, Sarah said, copying the files to secure locations. Someone went to a lot of trouble to make this look legitimate. As if in response, the lights in the office flickered. Through the window, they could see Judge Hamilton's office light still on, his shadow moving behind the frosted glass. And on his desk, clearly visible, sat a fresh batch of cookies, arranged with the same precise attention to detail as his digital filing system. Tomorrow's Friday, Tom noted quietly. 12:43 p.m. The high-profile resume hearing for Summit Development's downtown project packed Courtroom 306 to capacity. Judge Hamilton's bow tie featured miniature gavel patterns today, each one catching the light as he surveyed the crowd. His signature cookie platter sat on the bench, the aroma of fresh-baked treats filling the tense air. James Wilson, the courthouse's new janitor, pushed his cleaning cart past the gallery. His first week on the job had been uneventful until now. As he worked, he noticed how the judge's eyes followed the cart's movement, an unusual tension in his normally composed demeanor. "Before we begin," Hamilton announced, "I'd like to maintain our courthouse tradition." He gestured to the cookie platter. "Please, help yourselves." Sarah Martinez, watching from her clerk's station, noticed how deliberately the judge arranged the cookies. Some had subtle marks pressed into their tops, stars, crosses, circles, barely noticeable unless you knew to look. She caught Amy's eye at the stenotype machine, both recognizing the pattern from their late-night discovery. James reached for a cookie with a star pattern, but Tom, manning his coffee cart in the back, called out suddenly, "Sir, those contain nuts. I remember from last time." The warning came too late. Within minutes, James began showing signs of a severe allergic reaction. The courtroom erupted in chaos as paramedics were called. In the confusion, Sarah noticed Judge Hamilton quickly removing the cookie platter, his hands shaking. "I don't understand," he muttered, checking his personal notebook. That pattern was supposed to be nut-free. The coding system was perfect. Tom appeared at Sarah's desk, speaking in hushed tones. "The cookies, they're coded just like the files. Star patterns for approved projects, crosses for pending ones. He's been marking them based on who knows what about the deals." Through the commotion, Marcus Shaw stood calmly in his expensive suit, observing everything with calculating eyes. He approached the bench, speaking quietly to Hamilton. "Sloppy, Your Honor. Very sloppy." The paramedics stabilized James, but as they wheeled him out, something fell from his pocket. An FBI badge, partially concealed by his janitor's uniform. Judge Hamilton's face went pale. Sarah's computer pinged with an alert. The digital filing system was being accessed. Massive deletions in progress. She quickly activated the backup protocol she created, preserving the evidence they'd discovered. Order. Order in the court. Hamilton's voice cracked as he banged his gavel. But for the first time in 15 years, the sound commanded no respect. The cookies, his instrument of control, had literally made someone sick, and his carefully crafted system was crumbling faster than his famous snickerdoodles. Amy's stenotype machine quietly recorded everything. The judge's outburst, Shaw's whispered threats, the badge revelation. Her backup recorder, hidden in her purse, captured Shaw making a phone call. Initiate cleanup protocol. The kitchen is closed. Tom noticed something else. The judge's special green smoothie sat untouched on the bench, condensation beading on its surface like nervous sweat. Through the courthouse windows, the food truck was already pulling away, leaving its usual spot vacant for the first time in months. Sarah stood up, her voice clear in the chaotic courtroom. Your Honor, I have some files you should review about those special Friday afternoon meetings. The judge's hand froze over his gavel. In that moment, everyone in courtroom 306 witnessed something unprecedented. Judge Marcus Hamilton, the man who'd ruled this domain for 15 years, who'd built an empire on cookies and smoothies, looked genuinely afraid. His perfectly organized world of coded treats and secret meetings was unraveling like an overbaked cookie, and somewhere in the building, an FBI task force was already reviewing every file, every donation, and every perfectly timed smoothie delivery that had made it all possible. The rooftop garden gleamed in the afternoon sun, vegetable beds arranged in precise geometric patterns that had always been Judge Hamilton's pride and joy. He stood among his beloved plants, bow tie loosened for the first time in memory. Staring at the downtown skyline, his decisions had helped reshape. Beautiful view, isn't it? Sarah Martinez's voice carried across the garden. She emerged from behind the tomato trellises, holding a tablet displaying the garden's original design plans. Though I find the layout particularly interesting. Hamilton didn't turn. The garden committee approved every detail. Yes, the committee you personally selected. Sarah walked to a raised bed of herbs. It's fascinating how the plant beds mirror the exact layout of Summit Development's major projects. Each herb marking a property deal, every vegetable row aligning with approved construction sites. The judge touched a basil leaf gently. Gardening helps me think. Nothing more. Then you won't mind explaining why these mint plants are arranged in the same pattern as your digital file codes. Tom appeared from behind a garden shed, phone in hand. The ones ending in $signs. Hamilton's shoulders tensed. You've been quite busy at that coffee cart, young man. Not as busy as your food truck. Amy Chen stepped out from behind a pergola, her stenotype machine tucked under her arm. Did you know these garden beds are visible from every major developer's office in downtown? Perfect for sending signals about which projects would get approved. The garden fell silent except for the gentle whir of Amy's backup recorder. Hamilton moved to his prize rose bushes, each one labeled with a different judge's name. His predecessors in courtroom 306. 15 years, he said softly. 15 years of building something meaningful. Do you know how many affordable housing projects I approved? How many parks got funded through those foundation donations? Through bribes, Sarah corrected. Laundered through smoothies and hidden in charitable giving. Hamilton reached into his robe pocket, pulling out his leather-bound recipe notebook. Every cookie recipe in here represents a deal that helped this city grow. Every garden bed feeds the courthouse staff. I created a system that worked for everyone. Except justice, Tom added. A shadow fell across the garden. Marcus Shaw stood by the rooftop door, his perfect suit out of place among the vegetables. Time to harvest, Judge. The FBI is reviewing the foundation records. Hamilton looked at his garden, decades of legal experience telling him exactly how this would end. He turned to Sarah, holding out his recipe book. The snickerdoodle recipe on page 43. It's actually the combination to my personal safe. Everything you need is there. Judge Hamilton. A new voice called. James Wilson. now in a crisp FBI suit, emerged with several agents. "We need to discuss those Friday afternoon meetings." As the agents led Hamilton toward the door, he paused by his favorite rosemary plant. "The garden needs daily watering," he said to no one in particular. "The herbs are particularly delicate." Sarah opened the recipe book, finding page 43. Between ingredient lists and baking instructions, a detailed record of every deal, payment, and arrangement lay coded in measurements and temperatures. The evidence they'd spent weeks gathering had been literally growing in plain sight. Tom looked at the garden, suddenly understanding. The patterns, the layouts, it wasn't just organization. It was his filing system in plain sight, hidden in herbs and vegetables. A garden of secrets, Amy mused, her recorder capturing one final sound. The heavy door closing behind Judge Marcus Hamilton. His carefully tended empire of cookies, smoothies, and perfectly arranged plants left behind under the open sky. In the distance, a clock chimed 12:43 p.m., but for the first time in months, no food truck appeared in the parking lot below. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Courtroom 306, illuminating empty benches and an equally empty judge's seat. On the bench, a single cookie sat on a plain white napkin, the last of Judge Hamilton's famous treats, left untouched from the day before. Sarah Martinez stood in the doorway, taking in the scene. The courtroom looked different now, as if the revelation of secrets had somehow changed its very architecture. Tom's coffee cart sat quiet in the corner, a back in 10 sign hanging crooked on its side. "They're ready for the files," Amy said softly, appearing beside her with an evidence box. Inside, Hamilton's recipe book lay among stacks of coded documents, each one telling part of the story that had unraveled a 15-year empire of calculated kindness and coordinated corruption. The three of them worked in silence, documenting everything. Tom photographed the garden's layout from every angle, matching each plant bed to a development project. Sarah transferred the last of the digital evidence, every $sign file telling its own story of perfectly timed approvals and strategic delays. At precisely 12:43 p.m., they gathered in the rooftop garden. The space felt different too, less manicured, more honest. A young mint plant had broken free of its designated row, reaching toward the sun in defiance of Hamilton's precise patterns. "The newspaper's running the story tomorrow," Tom said, showing them his phone. The headline read, "Justice Served: How Cookies, Smoothies, and a Garden Grew a Web of Corruption." Sarah smiled. "Your blog post started all this,"